Today I'm going to be talking about a topic that I'm very passionate, which is DNF in books. Basically, why you should DNF books and when you should DNF books. I feel like this is not talked enough within the booktube book talk community because I feel like there's an emphasis on the quantity of books that you read over the quality, which is why a lot of the times people are like, oh, I've read this many books in a year, and it's always like a super huge number. I'm not like exempt from this. I have done that a lot in the past. I have read a lot of books that I realized later on that I did not care about, or I don't really remember what they're about, and I came to the realization that yeah, I was reading a lot of these books to fill in this quota of reading a high number of books. So in 2024 I made this new reading goal of reading books that I really loved, which I can share and recommend with you guys, which is why I'm talking about DNF in books, because this year I've already DNF'd 7 books and it's only February, so I think I'm kind of off to a good start. I feel like the biggest thing that I want to say is that you shouldn't feel guilty about DNF in books, which I feel like is an issue with some people. It also happened with me in the past when I was a lot younger, where I would force myself to read books even if I didn't like them because I was like, no, I started this book and I have to finish it. And I feel like a lot of people feel the same way because of the guilt of not finishing a book. First of all, you don't owe an author anything, and it doesn't matter whether or not you finish a book. Sometimes a book just isn't for you, and I feel like if you're reading a book and you can already criticize it so much, that's not the book for you. Sometimes I do feel bad because oftentimes when I talk about a book, I talk more about my criticisms rather than what I like about it. But if I really like the book, you can tell because the way that I speak about it is with like so much enthusiasm. I feel like another important thing is your time. I kind of see this as, for example, you're watching a K-drama, 16 episodes, 1 hour each. Why would you sit there and watch that whole K-drama if you don't like watching it? Personally for me, I would skip through the scenes and just watch the things that I want to watch. However, in a book, you obviously can't do that. I feel like when it comes to dropping shows, it's a lot more easier than dropping books. But again, if you're sitting there and you don't want to watch that show, why would you watch it? And that's the same thing when it comes to books. If you're forcing yourself to read it, you're basically just wasting your time. I feel like when you don't like a book, it is very obvious, and this is personally just things that I realize when I don't like a book. First of all, I don't have any motivation to read it. I take big breaks in between reading it. Whenever I read it, I either feel bored or I want to take a nap, and I feel like there's other components to why you may not like a book. For example, the plot, the writing, and the characters. I think with a plot, if a book is very slow, it can get quite boring and it's a little bit hard to get into, especially if nothing is really going on. And that's the same with the writing. The writing is very important when it comes to books, and some books have really beautiful writing and you can tell, but there are some books where the writing is very jarring in a way, and sometimes I question like, why is the writing like this? This is why sometimes I'm like, the book may not be bad, but the writing just takes me out of it, and I feel like that is like a reason why I DNF a book. And the other thing is the characters, because some characters can be written in kind of like a bland way, whereas other characters can be kind of annoying. So because of that, it's really hard to get into, especially if you don't connect with certain characters. And I feel like you just know when you don't like a book when you basically procrastinate reading it, I guess. And this is what I'm saying, where your time is very important, which is why you should DNF a book if you don't like it, is the fact that when you don't like a book, you take more time not reading it and you just kind of leave it there and force yourself to read it. But because of that, it takes up more of the time that you could be using to read another book that you really like. I think it's like obvious that when you really love reading a book, you can fly through it so quickly because you're so into it, you don't want to stop reading it. You basically just sit down, drop everything, and just like consume the book. And that's like the best feeling ever, but it's obviously not something that you come across with every book. I feel like an example of a book that I absolutely love and that I absolutely flew through is 𝐚𝐨𝐬𝐬𝐢 which is The Battle of Sword and Wine. This book is about 2,000 pages. It's a Dame book, and a lot of those books are very, very long, but because this book hasn't been officially translated into English, it's not separated into different volumes. And I read that whole book in 16 days, where it would have taken me months if I did not like it, and honestly I would have gave up at that point. But I love this book so much that every single time I had a break, I would sit down and read it, and I wanted to read it so much that I made time to read it. And I was also reading this book during like a busy period because I had assignments and everything, so obviously I didn't have a lot of time to spare when it comes to reading it, but I made the time because I loved reading it so much and I was able to fly through it. And that's kind of what I mean, where if you really, really love the book, you would go through it really quickly and it's more worth it than a book that you don't like. So on my reading journey, I did have to discover that it's okay to DNF a book, and that in a way I have found pleasure in DNFing books. I think it's always important to like realize that reading is for entertainment. It's not something that you do. I don't know why you would do it if you don't like it, but it's not something that you have to force yourself to do or force yourself to like. But recently in the reading books that I've uploaded this year, I have actually DNF'd a lot of books within those videos because I was like, I don't like them. Anyways, thank you guys for listening to my TED talk, but that's basically my 2 cents in DNFing books.